you, dearest sisters. So good to be with you in this forum, and with great gratitude to all the people involved in organising it and making it happen. I'm Christina Turner, I'm Urban Goddess, and I work with empowering women to meet in safe spaces where they can share their own deep inherent wisdom and strengthen it by recognizing, mirroring, and acknowledging it in each other. I've worked in the field of childbirth for a long time, since my own children were born, because it was such a deep initiatory experience for me, and I felt one that is largely lost in the modern Western highly medicalized world of childbirth. So I've written a book about it that was published in English in 2010, and I've been a committed childbirth and goddess activist in Sweden since around that time, and internationally, but Sweden is where my roots are, and that's where I've done most of my hands-on work with Swedish maternity services, trying to support women there to have the most empowering, blessed, autonomous, self-owned experiences when they give birth. So that's what I want to try to do today by being given this wonderful opportunity to work with three specific goddesses and the essential energies that they channel is both a challenge and a great opportunity to really feel into what these goddesses speak in me, what I hear and recognize in them, because I have their nature already within. I don't need to learn outside of someone else to tell me what these goddesses are. I have their names, I have some snippets of information about them, and I can find their source within me if I allow myself to listen into my own inherent goddess wisdom. So I want to welcome you to my space. This is my sacred space, my office, my sort of home temple, where I work, where I write, and I'm hoping that we could together collectively offer up this attention and this shared learning and space holding that we are doing together for all the women currently giving birth, because around the world there are thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of women giving birth in this moment, and they are standing in their goddess power, whether it is medicalized and interrupted in hospital, or whether they are empowered, knowledgeable, and wise to their true power, or whether they are simply birthing as nature intended in a very simple, natural way in the uncivilized parts of the world. Let's offer up this coming together for their benefit in this moment, during this time while we meet in this wonderful online way. So there is no other moment really in a woman's life where she can connect more deeply with the full range of the goddess's powers than during childbirth, because everything is there. The rage, the fear, the sex, the beauty, the divine, the challenge, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, it is all there. This is a woman's initiation. This is the deepest, richest path that she can aspire to, really, through a single moment, through this rite of passage that is childbirth. Woman's journey of spiritual ascension is distilled into a few hours or days, and we are so fortunate and blessed to have this opportunity. And perhaps that is also why patriarchy has been forced to oppress us so harshly for thousands of years, because we hold the power not just over life and death, growing life and bringing life into the world, but also we have this power of initiation, of instant spiritual ascension through experiencing the whole of cosmic creation in a few hours. So in order for our collective healing to take place, the male and the female principle together coming into a harmonious union for this new age that we are collectively birthing, we need to acknowledge and see and resonate with this power that is inherent in childbirth, because it's a very effective way of keeping women weak and disempowered, of not allowing them to have these empowering, rich experiences, both spiritually and physically, because my God, you are strong when you give birth. But yes, so birth is both the descent into the abyss, into what you cannot endure, what you cannot pass through. You must pass through the impassable, and it is simultaneously the ascent into the very highest realms of the spiritual world. So it is a deeply initiatory experience. It's where you collect your strength, where you gather your power, where you meet your goddess nature. Birth is very safe. Now, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, NICE, here in the UK, start their recommendations to birthing women with those words: giving birth is very safe. Because it is. It's generally when we mess with it that the dangers arise. And in our modern world, where we have access to excellent healthcare, excellent maternity services, good nutrition, birth is simply very safe. So this fearful myth that it is dangerous, risky, unpredictable, must have lots of specialists overseeing it at every moment in order for it to go well, is simply incorrect. There is no scientific evidence to back this up. And institutions like NICE recognize this, and also the World Health Organization recognized this. So this is not simply some sort of hippie goddess mantra. You know what I mean. This is something that is also embedded in the scientific community. So I wish for you to step into the confidence that birth is very safe. At the same time, birth is the closest you will ever come to death in your life, because this descent that I'm talking about, the descent into the goddess, you go to the place where life and death meet, and you collect your child from that place if you are present to the experience. And this is frightening, it is terrifying, and it brings out the strength you didn't know you had. And this is what I experienced with the birth of my children, is that I really came to the moment of death. Now, whose death? It's difficult to say. It's more a non-material location that you reach if you are open to it, to this intersection where the film is very, very thin between birth and death. And that is from where you retrieve your child. But death can happen during birth. It does happen during birth. And death happens when people walk out into the street, when people fly aeroplanes, when people go to work, when people spend time with their loved ones. Death is present everywhere. It's just for some reason we have become hyper-focused as a society on the dangers of birth. And it is simply not more dangerous than walking out into the street. So I just want you to hold that a little bit, that death is, of course, present during birth, and medical science is a wonderful, blessed gift that we have these wonderful obstetricians that can help us in difficult situations, and when women are ill or their babies are ill, and that we can get ambulances to hospital. It's a wonderful thing, but it shouldn't be misplaced. It shouldn't be put in the wrong place where it simply creates an obstacle for the natural flow of the woman's hormonal processes and physiology. And in any case, every birth will bring one death for certain, and that is the death of the woman you were She's gone. After you've gone through that, she is dead. And a new woman is born every time for every child. I was just looking at my ancestry the other day, and I was looking at my foremothers and seeing, they had my great grandmother. She gave birth to twins, one of which was my grandmother. Her mother gave birth to 10 children. 10 times that happened to her. None of those children died. At birth they died eventually. But at birth, which I think is a very interesting point to bring to the table in terms of the hysteria about the dangers of birth that are currently there. I looked at her mother, who gave birth to 6 children. None of them died in childbirth. We're now into the 1800s. I look back at her mother, who gave birth to 10 children too, in the 1850s, 1830s, somewhere around there. None of them died at childbirth. So there is something very iffy with the current consensus that, in the 100 years ago, women died like flies in childbirth. The only reason they died like flies is when we put them in hospital, laid them on their backs, obstructed birth, and then didn't wash our hands like traditional midwives had done for thousands of years before. So my foremothers were very fortunate in that they were very poor and lived in rural Sweden, so they probably just gave birth with a traditional midwife at home, and that's probably why their babies survived. But I'm just saying, just carry this with you when you go into your birthplace. Do not be overwhelmed by the fearful messages coming from the media and the world around you, and hold on to the fact that you are a woman in an infinitely long chain of other women who gave birth successfully to healthy children. I mean, this is amazing. And we have this knowledge within us, in our DNA, in our microbiome, in everything that we are, in our character traits, and so on. So, yes, so I have been invited to speak about these wonderful Hindu goddesses, Durga, Lakshmi and Saraswati, and I feel so blessed and grateful to look at them a little bit more closely and to see how they can help you in your birthing process. And we will try to summarize the essential energies that they embody and give you some memory aids to bring into the birthing room with you, so you can draw upon these powers whenever you need them in your process. So as I started to prepare for this talk, I was simply listening to the names of the goddesses and what their ancient names, these syllables, these sounds, these words, what they had to teach me, without reading anything, without thinking with the frontal lobes, but just listening and vibrating to their sounds. And these ancient sounds are not just random syllables. They have been very carefully placed in the flow of history by knowledgeable, good-hearted, wise beings for our benefit today, and they reach us today. These names are unchanged, and they reach us today with their power, with their etymology, with their vibration. And there's such gratitude backwards in time towards these beings that created this mythology, this system of learning, of teaching, this system of psycho-spiritual transformation that can be applied to any sphere of life. So let's just begin by listening a little to the names, and I invite you to do the same. Just play with the sounds and listen where do they resonate in you? What do they do to you when you say them? So I started with Durga, 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 Durga. So for me, what is manifesting here is strength, power, boundaries, simple, no messing. You don't mess with Durga. That became very clear when I was playing with these sounds. And if we go to Lakshmi, 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 Lakshmi. You know, just play with it. Listen to it. There's an intelligence in these syllables. And so for me, she embodies long flowing vowels, these continuous sounds, the flow of sounds. She's fluid, she's continuous, an opening, a release. And Saraswati, 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 to me becomes clear at once that this is a precisely regulated, measured, rhythmical, equal, harmonious, kind of a more intellectual energy to it, just that it's so measured and regular. Saraswati, Saraswati. There's a structure, there's an order there. And this is just inherent in the sounds, in the names. And we need to relearn to trust our ability to listen within and know with our deepest parts of ourselves what truth is, because we have access to this. We don't need some professor at a university telling. It helps, it can help, it can open up things like little windows, but we have this knowledge inside of us and we can access it. And this is the new world that we are moving into, where female intuition is becoming more and more important as artificial intelligence and technology takes over more and more. This power we have inside of us, which is of a deeper knowing, a recognizing knowing, a resonant knowing with all the structures and the harmonious vibrations of the universe that surround us. So we all need these, both men and women. We need this connection with the intuitive, and we can get there through our sensory experiences. So let's look at a little bit more detail at Durga, this beautiful, powerful warrior goddess. She's associated with a womb, which was news to me, so that's wonderful. Of course, the womb is this hermetically sealed vessel where creation takes place, and for a vessel to be hermetically sealed, it needs boundaries, clear boundaries. So that she is the goddess of war, a warrior. She is the protective mother energy. Her divine wrath is an essential part of her. And she has the destruction, the power of destruction that also entails the power of creation. Destruction and creation are sides of the same coin, just as life and death in the birth moment are sides of the same coin. And you see that they are not juxtaposed. That's the strange thing. The more closely you experience them and the more deeply you experience them, you see that they are the same. And I will come into this a bit more later on when we're talking about Durga. So literally, the etymology of Durga is impassable, that which you cannot pass through. So the boundary, the invincible, the unassailable, the fortress, something that's very difficult to defeat or pass. And it comes from the root dur, which means difficult, and gam, to pass through, to go through. So Durgam. And she is portrayed with 8 or 18 hands, and each hand holding a weapon. It sounds quite a lot like a mum to me, that, ready to destroy and create at any moment with her 18 hands. So she is associated with Kali, these energetic aspects of the goddesses. The names are not so important in that sense, or the labels, of distinguishing between them. Again, I encourage you to feel into your intuitive knowing of what these energetic essences or signatures mean to you and how you can use them in your life. But she has the power over life and death, and she is embodied fury. Now, this is the energy that can frighten away that which you do not wish to allow into your sacred space, into your hermetically sealed vessel, whatever process we're relating it to. But we're now looking at the womb and the opening of the womb, and that is childbirth. So she can be both terrifying and destructive and benevolent and nurturing, just like a mother needs to be. And the protection of the boundaries during childbirth relate to the fact that birth is a highly complex and very sensitive hormonal and physiological process that has been refined over hundreds of thousands of years. And when it is disrupted, it stops, because your hormonal and physiological, your instinctive parts feel that it is simply not safe. This is not a good place to give birth. Stop it and try again later when you are safe, when you are in your safe space, when you are in your cave, in your protected area, wherever it is you feel safe. That is where you can give birth in the free flow. So I guess the first boundaries to consider with regard to birth relate to your chosen space. You know, choose the space where you are going to give birth carefully, because when we look at other mammals, when they go to give birth, they withdraw. They go away on their own to a dark, sheltered area where they can be left alone. You don't have other cows coming up to the birthing cow, checking on her, prodding her, putting their hooves inside her, measuring her, asking her how she's progressing, talking about her, shining lights on her. You know, this is highly disrupted, and it is in fact regulated in law. We are not allowed to treat other mammals in this way. But for some reason, we still permit this, and this is what I believe are the invisible patriarchal structures that are hampering the physiological flow of birth. So we are permitted to disrupt a woman in this way. So therefore, it's very important to choose your birth space carefully. Now, most women in the West today give birth in hospital, and I gave birth to my first child in a hospital. It was an alternative birth clinic, so there was no hospital equipment there, but it was right next to a hospital because I too was frightened, and I wanted to be near a hospital because I believed that was the safest environment. What I found through that experience was that it went well. It went very well. I didn't require any interventions, but I was still disrupted by being in, first of all, getting into the car, driving there in the middle of labor when labor had started, slowed contractions. And then as they started again, and I'd been working for about 2 hours and was really going into myself, well, the midwife's shift was over and she had to leave. And this woman who had become my anchor and the most important person in the universe for me was going, and then my labor stopped again. So eventually I gave birth. It didn't take too long, but I gave birth in that environment. But what I understood about that, for me, the safest birth space was simply one that is as undisturbed as possible. And that is what led me to create a safe environment in my home for my other two births. But whatever choice you make, whether you choose to give birth in a stream in nature, in your home with a midwife, in a hospital with a midwife, with obstetricians, an elective cesarean, whatever form you choose, think about the space and make it your space. So let's say you decide on an elective cesarean. Now, you have every right, just like any other woman, to feel like a goddess when you give birth in this way that is right for you. So there's a lot you can do to create an environment that is reflective of you owning your birth space. Through music, through essential oils, who's allowed to come and go, where they are allowed to stand. You have agency in the birthing room. Remember that. This is not a wish or a desire or a female neediness. This is the law. This has been tried and tested in law in the European Court of Human Rights. The woman has absolute agency in the birthing room. And your choice of birthplace is yours, and take charge of it. So it's important to maintain the boundaries of the birthing space, because there are many demonic forces against which Durga can fight, do her warrior thing, wherever and in whatever way you choose to give birth. Many forces that want to disturb your birth is what I'm saying. So in the example of the elective cesarean, it's very easy for the obstetricians to simply take over and make you feel like a completely passive patient lying there having yourself cut open, perhaps a protective screen in the way you can't see anything, they're talking over your head. Now you can change that. You can take control of that situation by asking the protective screen to be removed, by saying you want music played, you want a minimum amount of people in the room, you want anyone who's not actively doing something to stand behind your head so they're not all just standing looking at your opening womb. You can reach out and receive your baby yourself. You can insist on the baby going straight onto skin and skin to maximize the microbiome, which is so important because you have that on your skin also, and to increase the chances of bonding well. So I'm taking that example, but of course this applies to any way you choose to give birth. And I would advise you, as part of your Durga protective boundaries energy, to think carefully about all the aspects of your birth. Make a birth plan. Write down what it is, what you would like your ideal birth to be like. Plan for it, prepare for it, because by doing this, you are creating the neuronal pathways in your brain and in your nervous system that optimize your chances of this manifesting in the world around you when you come to give birth. So Durga will help you to stick to this birth plan, to maintain your boundaries against the forces that want to mess with it and to disrupt your sacred space that you've created for yourself. So whenever you feel wobbly or uncertain or feel like anyone else is taking over or challenging your autonomy in subtle ways, I would advise you to intone quietly to yourself or out loud, if you're feeling brave enough, Durga, 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 Durga. Because by intoning these syllables, you are invoking her presence and you will not be alone. You are invoking this energetic goddess nature into the room where you are. It doesn't have to be childbirth either. But you are manifesting her energetically in your space. And this is a very empowering thing you can do just by intoning the syllables, inviting her into your space. So let us say that things during your wonderful natural birth that you have planned and prepared for and created your space with essential oils and music and your birth prep classes and everything, starts going in an unwanted direction. Well, what is this? People around you start getting worried. The baby might be showing signs of being in distress. And like I said, death is an essential part of birth. Your baby might die. You might die. This might happen when you go step outside on the road as well, just to put it into perspective. But this is something that we need to feel and live with more closely, because this is the reality. This is reality. We live in this protected bubble as if these things never happen, but they do. So I want to share with you a personal experience of an encounter with the goddess of destruction and the goddess of creation, where you can see that they are simply two aspects of the same being. And this relates to my beloved daughter Ella, who very nearly died 3 years ago in a car accident, a very severe traumatic brain injury where her face and her skull was smashed, and she was in a coma for a month. And I was at her bedside praying, anointing her feet, are drawing upon every possible healer and protection that I could find around the planet, doing everything I could. In the intensive care was amazing, and it saved her life in the end. But what I want to say really is that I eventually got to the point where I had to give up my trying. And you are likely to come to this place in the birthing process too. And what I found there, where I really was in the face of death, alone in the face of death of my beloved child, in a coma, was that it's when the moment when I gave up is when I felt and saw that the goddess is present directly above me. I know she's not in a physical location, but that is how I experienced it. She was above my child and above me, and she was streaming down, pouring, streaming down this invisible grace and healing and nurture and love and hope and fixing and repairing, and it was streaming down from her. And equally, at the very same moment, she was drawing up and opening up this channel, ready to receive the spirit of my child anytime she was ready to leave the physical body. So the choice was entirely hers. And the goddess was right there, equally destroying, if you like, in her readiness to receive the dying child, wanting to eat her, wanting to receive her, wanting to take her away from me, in the material world. That was sort of the destructive, this smashing, breaking apart, the illness, the death. That aspect of the goddess was intimately connected with this nurturing, pouring down of healing and grace. That's the closest I can describe the fact that the goddess can be the merciless destroyer and the nurturing mother at once. And this is the beauty of Durga. So I hope that's helped a little bit clarify how Durga can be used in childbirth. So let's move on to Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the heart, flow. She is the Hindu goddess of wealth, fortune, prosperity, abundance. It's generation, continuous generation. And she's born from the churning of the milky primordial ocean. Now, this is something which fascinates me, but that's for a different video, I think, the churning of the milky ocean. But this comes up again and again with Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is connected with water for sure and the ocean. It's the maintenance of life, the nurturing, the maintenance of life, and the continuity. It's a very continuous energy, flowing, ongoing, not this sort of firmness, the consonants of Durga. This is very Lakshmi. It's continuous. The etymology of Lakshmi is Laks and Laksa, meaning perceive, observe, know, understand, in combination with goal, aim, objective. Know and understand your goal. You are moving towards an aim. And in childbirth, obviously, this is the understanding and knowing and flowing through the process of the child exiting your body and entering into another dimension, the world, the material world. And Lakshmi emerges during the creation of the universe, floating over the water on the expanded petals of a lotus. So this opening flower, I mean, the lotus is a very rich symbol in itself, but it's the expanded petals, the open lotus. So look at the open cervix and the flow of your womb and your vaginal space, opening, unfolding, stretching, with this wisdom of the opening lotus of wisdom. And Lakshmi personifies wealth, riches, happiness. It's this abundant flow, never-ending flow. And she is often depicted with a lotus in her hand. And so if we look at the symbolism of the lotus a little bit more, it is this beautiful, gorgeous, fragrant flower, which is in my Urban Goddess candle, by the way, which is burning now at the moment to help create the sacred space here. Yes, this beautiful goddess flower, which it emerges from the deep, dark water, and its roots are deep, deep into the mud. And I mean, this is an important symbolism and a common saying. No mud, no lotus. You cannot have the beauty and the blossoming without the dirt and the grit. You cannot have the flower without the mud, the shit. You know, this is what that rhyme. This is what we have to transform. Our life experiences are this. The beauty, the fineness, the spiritual ascension come out of the dirt, the sweat, the blood, the blech of our daily lives. You know, the stuff that we just want to get rid of and don't want to experience. Well, that's where the gold is buried. And it's the same with childbirth. This is what I mean. There's this descent into the abyss in order to make the ascent into the heavens. If you want initiation, that is what you're going to have to do one way or another. And there is no more efficient process than childbirth. Really, it is the spiritual route to mastery embodied and distilled into a few hours. So what this symbolism of the lotus can teach us is the good or the bad of any circumstance is really an illusion, because the purity is there regardless. No mud, no lotus. They both need to be there. The symbols associated with Lakshmi are elephants and the owl. Now, elephants symbolize work, activity, and strength. And again, you see here the continuous process, the work that is labor. Labor. We work. We work for our spiritual inner life, and we work during labor. It's a work. It's a physiological work that requires strength. And it requires effort. Your child is working through labor, working to be born and meet you. Your child initiates labor. The baby is a conscious being who wishes to come to you and participates actively in the labor. And you work actively mostly by preparing yourself and allowing your labor to be unhindered by stepping out of the way of what will hinder labor. So the owl symbolizes knowledge, particularly that which can be retrieved when surrounded by darkness. So again, this is, you know, all this fear that is foisted upon us about childbirth, fear and danger. We need the wisdom and the eyes of the owl to see through that darkness. And this is where Lakshmi's attributes can help us with the elephants, the labor of the elephants, and the ability to see through darkness of the owl. You know, in a lot of the ceremonies I've done for myself, I have this whole little range of invisible helpers that are always present, and one of them is an owl, and I find that such a useful spiritual assistant, really. I read this just now, and it's so funny. Lakshmi typically wears a red dress embroidered with golden threads. I didn't plan this, but this is just one of my dresses I wear for my women's circles. But that's interesting. So perhaps you could incorporate something, a red fabric and some golden threads into the textiles you bring with you into your birth space, wherever it is, to draw upon the richness, the abundant flow that is Lakshmi. So a host of divine celestial objects came up during the churning of the Milky Ocean, and one of them was the goddess Lakshmi. And let's just listen to her one more time. Lakshmi. There's this opening, this flow, the opening of the throat, the opening of the cervix of the throat is the opening of the cervix of your womb. So if you can open this space, you can open that space. So Lakshmi lends herself so well to chanting, breathing, groaning, speaking your child into being. Borrow her name, use her name to stay in your flow. It's a strong rope you can cling to during the labor of your work, the work of giving birth to your baby. It is about the doing of the birth, the physiological process, and the oxytocin call and response. So I thought we'll just diverge a little bit here and talk about this, one of these natural hormonal flows that is often interrupted during childbirth, and look both at the natural flow and how it is interrupted, because this relates to the physiological manifestation of the Lakshmi energy. So during birth, your brain produces oxytocin, which is the love hormone, it's been called. It's the bonding hormone. It's secreted when we touch each other, when we cuddle, when we kiss, when we breastfeed our babies. So it's a bonding hormone, whether with your lover, your mother, your baby, whatever. And during birth, it is created in ever-increasing pulses in your brain that floods your brain with this love hormone, and also reaches your bloodstream, and in your bloodstream it travels to your womb. And when it travels to your womb, it makes your womb contract, gradually building up in strength to squeeze out your baby through all the beautiful folds of your vaginal tract, which expand so gorgeously into this skirt and this red carpet through which your baby can be born. So the oxytocin, when it reaches your womb, it makes it contract, and the womb in its turn communicates back to your brain to ask it to increase the next pulse of oxytocin. So there is a call and response between the producer of the oxytocin and your womb. Your womb tells your brain exactly how much oxytocin it needs for the optimal contractions to squeeze out your baby through your birth canal. It is individualized, customized, optimized for your physiology, for your being, your character, and your baby. Now, no synthetic oxytocin can do this. And as your brain is flooded with oxytocin, it creates a calming, nurturing, pain-relieving environment in your brain. So this is what your natural oxytocin does. Now, in the medicalized process of birth, first of all, like I mentioned to you about my own birth, the first disruption is getting up from your home to go into hospital. Get in a car, go into reception of a hospital, lots of people, stressful environment. You're a bit nervous anyway. Your partner is probably nervous. You've got to answer lots of questions. There are different lights, different smells, different sounds, lots of things going on. A new room, a new space. Well, what happens? Same as for a cow, a horse, a dog. Your contractions most commonly come to a halt. You are given some time, but, hospital beds aren't infinite. They need that hospital bed for another woman as soon as possible. This is the truth. So if you haven't got going after a few hours, it will be suggested to you that there is something wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. Everything is right with you. Your body is responding, saying, this is not a safe place to give birth. Okay? That is what happens. So they will say to you, I think we need to strengthen your contractions a bit, get you going a bit because you're a bit weak. Your contractions are a bit weak. So we can give you this wonderful oxytocin. It's identical to your own oxytocin. It's just exactly the same as what you produce yourself in your brain. Of course, you're going to say, well, yes, okay then, because probably you're trained, like most women are, to be helpful, accommodating, wanting to listen to what people who are kind to you say, because they will be very kind to you. And I have the utmost respect and love for the midwives that work in these very difficult conditions and are trying to cling on to normal birth in the medicalized West. But anyway, that's a different story. So right now I'm just talking about it from the perspective of the woman. So it will be suggested to you that you need your contractions enhanced because they are not strong enough as they are. And you will be told that the substance you will be given is identical to your natural oxytocin, which is absolutely true. What they won't tell you is, most probably, I'd be very surprised if they tell you the risks and counterindications of administering synthetic oxytocin. Synthetic oxytocin is not produced in your brain. It is administered intravenously into your bloodstream, and it doesn't reach your brain because there is such a thing as the blood-brain barrier. If you've studied some medicine or read some scientific articles, you will have heard about this. The blood-brain barrier is very effective at keeping your brain safe because it's a very important organ. And the oxytocin won't reach your brains. And it is also administered in a continuous high dose. So there's none of this call and response. There's none of this increasing pulsation, increasing strength of contractions. It's just strong, hard contractions without any of the calming, pain relieving effects where oxytocin floods your brain. Now, it's well known, the women who have been induced, very many of them describe it as the most horrific contractions. They are known to be much more painful than your own. Well, obviously they are, because you're not getting any of the pain relieving effects. But you won't be told this, and this is the tragedy of medicalized birth. You know, you ought to at least be informed of this. So that's why you need to do your own research. But we'll come to that when we get to Saraswati. But anyway, so these contractions are then very strong, very painful, and you're not getting any of the calming effects, which also prepare you incidentally for loving your baby and bonding and breastfeeding. So you're not getting that, you're just getting really painful, strong contractions. And of course, then you are in a hospital environment, so you're going to be offered an epidural. Who in their right mind wouldn't accept that? That's why I chose to give birth in an alternative birth clinic for my first baby, because I knew that if someone's just giving me, offering me stuff to my face, I'm going to accept it. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to be transferred if something went horribly wrong, which of course it didn't because I was healthy. But anyway, so you will be offered an epidural. You will most probably have that epidural. You will now be hooked up to more and more equipment, and less able to move, less and less able to get into the positions that instinctively, you know, facilitate your birth and work with your physiognomy and your baby's physiology. And the epidural works quite well. Oh yeah, oh, this is so much better. I don't feel so much pain. That's much better. But what happens? Your womb is not sending any signals to your own oxytocin production center up here. And so your body basically tells you, oh well, she's not really giving birth anymore. So we certainly don't need to increase the contractions. So what happens? They tell you again, oops, I think we need to tweak up the oxytocin a bit. So it gets more painful again, stronger contractions. So you say, oh, this is unbearable. I can't stand this. I've been doing this for 24 hours now. I'm exhausted. I've had enough. So they say, okay, well, we'll turn up the epidural. And there it goes. This is the hospital call and response. Synthetic oxytocin epidural, synthetic oxytocin epidural, synthetic oxytocin epidural. You be very careful you don't get caught in that intervention cascade, because that is what it is. And this is a phenomenon that is not something I've made up, or some sort of crazy feminist birth activists have made up. This is something that the World Health Organization is propagating for must stop or reduce significantly, because it is harming women all over the world. The over-medicalization of birth is now the biggest problem in childbirth. It's not women dying in childbirth due to lack of medical care. It is being harmed by medical care. This is shocking. And I'm writing a book about this in Swedish at the moment. But anyway, so you're stuck in this horrible intervention cascade, and what happens now is that your baby inside the womb is being squeezed harder and harder and harder, and its blood flow from your uterus is being disrupted with more and more frequency and more intensity. And of course, because by now you are also hooked up to continuous fetal monitoring to check the baby's heartbeat, your baby is now showing signs of distress, and rightly so. Now is when it becomes mortally dangerous to your child. Okay? This is not you. You've not done this. Lakshmi's not done this. The physiological flow's not done this. The interventions have done this. Your baby is showing signs of hypoxia. That means oxygen starvation of blood to the brain. And everyone in the birthing room goes into a panic. The obstetrician comes in, the knight on their white horse, saving the woman, saving the baby by either an instrumental birth, which then becomes very urgent. You have to force it. You often injure the woman. She tears. This is where these horrible sphincter ruptures that you might have heard of occur. They don't very, very rarely occur in home births. And this is where episiotomies occur, where you cut the vagina because you've got to get the baby out quickly because it's getting brain damaged by these terrible contractions. And so if you don't have that, you then have an emergency cesarean where obviously you know they slice into your womb and lift your baby out of the womb very quickly. You will have no agency over an emergency cesarean. You will not be able to maintain your space, and you will be, you know, probably going to be traumatized by this experience. It sounds horrific because it is horrific. And your baby is safe. You got a healthy baby, and you're supposed to be happy and grateful for this. There's something very wrong with modern maternity services. And I say this for like the fourth time. This is not saying that obstetricians aren't needed or hospitals aren't needed. They are for the women that aren't well or have sudden, unexpected complications. It happens, but it happens very, very rarely if you're giving birth in a midwife-led unit or at home. It does happen, but very, very rarely. You can look at the research yourself on the Cochrane Review database, and you will see there is overwhelming scientific evidence now that it is safer for women to give birth, healthy women with, you know, good nutrition, access to maternity services, and who live in the West, basically, with the kind of health we have here, to give birth outside of hospital, either in a midwife-led unit or at home, than it is in hospital because of these over-interventions. When they are not over-interventions, they are life-saving interventions, and that's the rightful place for them. So anyway, I hope I've given you an example there of what the natural Lakshmi flow of the oxytocin process should do and can do, and how it can be disrupted by outside, I won't call them demonic forces, demonic influences, yes, and this is where we need Durga to keep them at bay. So now we come to Saraswati. I can't help feeling a particular affinity with her because I'm a bit of a SWAT myself. I love studying and organizing things. So Saraswati, she is connected with the third eye, the crown. You know, this is wisdom, higher knowing, the higher intelligence, and she is the goddess of knowledge, music, the arts, wisdom, and learning. And the syllables that comprise her name are Saras, meaning pooling water. Now, water is a symbol universally acknowledged in many religions as signifying truth, a higher truth. You know, there's a lot about water in the Bible, for example. And Vati, which is she who possesses. So she who possesses the truth and language and speech, the possessor of knowledge. She is the mother of eloquent speech and melodious music and active energy. So I like this idea of music, because music is not just about an entertainment or something pleasant. It is harmony. What is harmony? What is measure? What is rhythm? These are the cyclical energies, the harmonious flow of waveforms that comprise every single thing. As you look around the room you're in, you see the light being reflected back to you in waveform. You get scents coming into your olfactory system in waveform. You get sounds coming into your ears in waveform. You get sensations in your body coming into you in nervous impulses in waveform. Birth is a waveform. Everything is a waveform. And Saraswati connects you with this at a higher meta level, you know, in the crown, like outside the system. She is at the meta level, and she can get the overview you need to understand things from a more solar perspective, if you like, a more intellectual, analytical perspective. She embodies the experience of the highest reality, and her themes are white dress, and her symbol is the swan. a symbol of purity and discrimination. Now, discrimination is such an important quality to have in childbirth. Like I've said again and again, you need to discriminate between when something is needed and when it is not needed. When you go into your own space and when you ask for help, when you ask someone to leave and when you ask someone to come into your space. This power of discrimination is very important. And she also embodies insight and holds a book and a pen in her hand. So you see, she's a SWAT and a student and a scholar. And this is what you too need to become if you want to take charge of your birth experience. She has 4 arms signifying the mind, the intellect, the imagination, and self-consciousness. And she holds a book, a rosary, a musical instrument, and a water pot. So she has this purifying power of water of truth to separate right from wrong, the clean from the unclean. And she's also associated through this water with the soma, this holy drink that again appears in all the great religions and shamanic traditions, the drink that liberates and leads to knowledge, whether you want to call it ayahuasca in the modern day or the soma of the fly agaric that my ancestors imbibed. If you think about somatic of the body, psychosomatic knowledge, how can we understand this complex interaction between the psyche, the mind, the emotional, energetic fields and the body, how it influences the body? You can see very clearly in birth that if you don't feel safe, you're not going to open. That's psychosomatic. There's a relationship between the two. So she creates harmony, and harmony is a regularity of rhythm. And again, look at this call and response between your uterus and your oxytocin production and the contractions of your womb and the opening of your cervix, the flowering, the blossoming of your cervix, the cervix of your throat and the cervix of your womb, and the unfolding of your beautiful vagina that's so stretchy, so very spacious and stretchy, such a red carpet for your child to be born onto. So Saraswati gives you the opportunity for preparation and study to read up, get wise, and take responsibility for your birth. She has the discipline of the scholar, the discipline of the musician, the repetition, the practice, the repeat. Like if you're preparing through hypnobirthing for your birth, for example, it's a similar thing. You're putting yourself in a trance-like state on a daily basis, meditating, visualizing the birth that you want, the positions you're going to take. You are creating the neuronal pathways in your body and in your nervous system that will allow this to happen and manifest when the moment comes. For me, the key to Saraswati is the connection with the intelligence of your instinctive functioning. Now, this is a very precious thing, to be allowed to catch a glimpse of the very great intelligence of what goes on in your body. The sophistication of these processes. I mean, when you're pregnant, you have this blessed opportunity to feel into cravings and revulsions, This is your instinctive intelligence coming closer to your ordinary day-to-day consciousness and communicating with you and saying, don't eat that and do eat this. Oh, that stinks. Or, oh, that smells good. So it comes closer to the surface and you are allowed to connect with it much more closely during birth. And this is the process that you not just bear witness to in birth, you are the channel for it. It happens through you. Whatever way you choose to give birth, only you can bring this baby into the world. Only you. If it's through an elective cesarean, through a hospital birth, through a home birth, through a birth in a field, unassisted, it is only you who can do it. So why let someone else take charge of your process? Use Saraswati to prepare, to study, keep a journal, make notes, meditate, practice, repeat, measure, practice like you want to become the musician, the composer, the director, the conductor of your birth, and take charge in the birthing room through the help of these three beautiful goddess energies. Well, I hope I have given you a little bit of a review of how you can feel into your own inherent intuitive intelligence and connect with any goddess or the energetic signature of any mythical figure, really, that you wish. Trust your own ability to connect through the words. If it is an ancient wisdom and an ancient teaching, there will be so much embedded. I'm sure Lila has been speaking a lot about this in the use of mantras, because this is what enlightened beings have done since time immemorial. Used the power of sound, the sound of primordial creation in mantras, for the benefit of healing of yourself or something you want to achieve, and for the benefit of all living beings. And I hope that the syllables of these three goddesses and what I have helped open up for you in terms of your own research that you can do will make it a little bit easier to bring ancient wisdom into modern births, and that this can be helpful for you. So, yes. Oh, thank you, Lila. Thank you. That's beautiful. This is my book that I wrote in 2010, and it is basically based on my, this is just my own experiences of childbirth and the deep initiation that I experienced. So this was really before a lot of the stuff that's come out in the 10 years has been. It's astounding what's happening at a global level, and it's so wonderful that we're sharing it and growing in wisdom. But this is my experience of encountering the divine and the initiation of childbirth. So if you wish to read in more detail about what I say about how to prepare for birth and what the significance of the goddess is, you are welcome to engage with that book. And I work with, like I said, with women's circles and occasional courses, workshops and retreats. And you will find information about it on my website, urbangoddess.se. That's a Swedish domain. Where you can also buy my essential oils if you wish. Well, they are in the form of a roller rescue that I used. I made myself high before this session, which I carry in my handbag always because it's the essence of the world's goddesses in a roller scent. And I have candles also for ceremonial use. And thank you so much, Lila. And thank you, all my dear sisters, for listening and for being there for me. I feel your presence so strongly. And I offer all benefit of this moment spent with you up for the benefit of those women who are giving birth now. May they flow, may they flow. Health, ease, well-being and healing for the planet. Thank you.